Watching News at Prime, let's bring you another important discussion now. NPA head Shamila Batohi officially leaves office this week. She exits after 7 years at the helm, making her the first NPA head since 1998 to complete a full term without being fired or forced out. Well, let's unpack her legacy now, and we're joined by Dr. Suhayfa Bhamjee, senior lecturer in criminal law at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Dr. Bhamjee, good to talk to you, and thank you very much for making time for us. Shamila Batohi leaves office this week, and there have been many views about what her legacy should look like. In your view, what does her legacy, or how does her legacy look as she leaves office?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me this evening, and good evening to everyone watching. It's a troubled one, and it's a difficult one to analyze, because I think the end of her tenure, which came through in the Nkabinde Inquiry, probably damaged any sort of positivity that she'd done. But as far as the legacy, she started off on a strong note, intending to handle a number of TRC cases, and also tackle state as well as private corruption. But even so, with all those lofty goals, there were challenges. I think at the beginning, she wasn't sort of in denial of what those challenges were. Eventually, she did admit lack of skills and things like that within the NPA, etc. But a number of things have certainly unraveled from those perspectives. So although there may have been some gains, they certainly were not enough, and completely and absolutely unraveled as far as her tenure, if we were to sum it up in Nkabinde Inquiry, from certainly her performance and attitude in the Commission inquiry.
I'll make what some people are going to say is an unpopular comparison here. I'll take you to the political sphere. President Ramaphosa comes into office on the back of what some people say were 9 wasted years that were coupled with state capture, which we now know existed. That's thanks to the Zondo inquiry. And so President Ramaphosa inherited an administration that was on its knees. And some will possibly argue same when it comes to Shamila Batohi. People like Sean Abrams, that I would want to think she immediately took over after. They are people that are viewed through a particular lens. Do you think that this would have been a difficult exercise nonetheless to try and turn around this institution that basically had been emasculated?
Yeah, so I think that's an important vantage point to look at it from. And I don't think you're unpopular. I think a number of people have observed that. We must be honest that what she stepped into was a difficult situation and a difficult or problematic institution challenged by many years of instability, internal corruption. And what came through from her tenure was that the realities of the depth of the capture and the corruption. But that being said, how you traverse it says a lot. There could have been, and it's very easy to sit as armchair critics after, from the outside looking in, but the way in which several matters were approached, the closeness of scrutiny that she as the NPA, we would have hoped ought to have had over these matters, the more closer rein in on certain aspects, trying to be a little more assertive, certainly with getting to grips with what the challenges were, and even setting more measurable, not say measurable, but more tangible, realistic goals in that let's focus on this particular issue rather than be completely spread out. I think some of the criticisms made by a number of commentators, not least myself, has been that she over-delegated or over-relied on the deputies and that sort of thing for these, what we were hoping for, measurables and achievables to be gained. And we can look at the track record of the number of cases, the number of collapsed cases, which is unfortunate.
And you point me now to a direction that we were eventually going to go anyway, because what her office will argue, in fact, her seated in front of me last year sometime, she basically said, what we as media have done is to look at the high-profile cases, the number of them that have allegedly collapsed. I would want to put that in her words, versus the cases that have been concluded in court where people have gone to jail. Basically, we have looked at high-profile cases versus other cases that have gone through the court process. And when you tally the numbers, they are going to be in her favor. This is her argument. How would you counter her in that regard?
Well, look, I think this is now where we're arguing maths and statistics, and we're arguing what happens at lower court levels and what happens at, like we're saying, more high-profile matters. I think the lower courts would tend to sort of run systematically, and if she's counting things like robberies, housebreaking, I'm going to say rape, but I don't think the NPA has been terribly successful there. Rape, murder, things like that. Those add up as in small matters, right? Some of them are deliberated simply by, pleading, where the accused person pleads, and those the NPA will chalk up as wins. So obviously those are going to weigh on a certain level as look at all of the successes that we did. But the eyes of society are on how we're dealing with high-level capture, high-level corruption, and those high-level cases. Yeah. And even if you think about the Tsoko case, the Omotoso thing, there's a number of things that on that level don't add up. So we would be, it's natural to look at the types of cases that make it to media attention. I think there is a place and a space for the media to alert the public or bring certain matters forward. There is something to be said about honest and earnest reporting and media and journalism. But I don't think that it's quite correct to say you're only focusing on the failings and not on the successes. Yeah. There's something also to be said about the reality or the reliability of the correctness or accuracy of those statistics.
Finally, Dr. Bhamjee, I'm going to end off where you started, and that is her conduct before the Nkabinde Inquiry. Those were very strong words, that whatever successes she had accumulated in the 7 years in office, she basically had undone that with her conduct at the inquiry. Please expand on that. Do you think that she can ever recover from that kind of behavior?
Well, look, we've been going around and talking on these points about how it was a difficult tenure that she's had, a difficult office that she took over with. But again, it is how you carry yourself forward. Through all of these commissions of inquiry, one of the things that we can accept that the purpose of these inquiries are for is to create transparency, accountability, and we expect those that are giving testimony or those that are being interviewed, etc., questions for that transparency. We would expect at the very least that the NPA would not be so, the head of the NPA would not be so resistant to giving honest, earnest responses. I think much of her, we did see hesitancy. I think she was very concerned, possibly we could see being painted into a corner or, painting herself into a corner. But it was not favorable, certainly, to show that sort of resistance to the idea of accountability or transparency.
Very quickly, Dr. Bhamjee, I think the question I want for you to give an answer to in a more crystal way is, if the Nkabinde Inquiry basically the fitness to hold office of Advocate Chauke. If that collapses, do you believe that that should be for her to carry the can because of how she conducted herself, especially given that this was established thanks to her advocating for this before the president, and therefore an inquiry was indeed established to test the fitness of this prosecutor? If it collapses owing to her behavior, do you think that she should actually take accountability here? And what would that look like?
Yeah, so sorry, just to go back to the second half of your question, does she have space to redeem herself? Look, the matter's meant to resume on tomorrow, and let's see what comes forward. Will she resume? Will she return? And will she start answering questions openly? So I think there's much that can be possibly ground gained back that way. Another thing, going now to your second question, is who carries the can? I think in litigation, in all matters, entire cases don't necessarily just come down to one witness, the credibility of one witness. But if it is a core aspect, it could have particular failings. We don't know what the repercussions of any finding of the commission, whether it's in favor of the NPA or in favor of Advocate Chauke. We don't know. Both sides of the coin could have recourse there. But there is something to be said. Again, we'll go back to the point about over-delegation. And I think that does set the tone for incoming National Director Andy Motibi, and what that means for in his 2 years, or 2.5 years, how is he going to scrutinize and manage and steer the ship? So it's quite a loaded thing.
Dr. Suhayfa Bhamjee, thank you so much for making time for us, and more importantly, your analysis. Senior lecturer in criminal law at the University of KwaZulu-Natal.